We are at Spode Works. It was a ceramic factory that at the moment it's abandoned, as many of the factories that are around Stoke at the moment. It's a space that obviously it needs a regeneration, it needs to be given back to the community, it needs to be part of the city. And there are conversations around that at the moment. The engagement that architects can have within the community and the conversation that the process can trigger, it really helps in terms of really understanding what people want, because we design spaces for people.
So I think the project's objective is really to explore this process of engaging a community in their memories of site when you're looking at regeneration.
I think community involvement is tremendously important. I mean, you've got a 10-acre island site in the heart of Stoke that separates Stoke from the university and the train station, and you've got an incredible opportunity to pull the public in, build a community and tie that into the existing sort of urban grain. It would be amazing.
With this project, what we have tried to do is just to bring community and people who really spend time in this space to work with architects to devise new ideas and new futures.
I think a project like this is really exciting because it's trying to bring together that kind of conceptual underpinning, really thinking about, what does the future look like in terms of clay and architecture, but also, why is it a material that's so important to so many people, and how can it become an amazing creative outlet, as well as opening up new conversations about sustainability, making, and all sorts of other things.
Generations of families have worked here, and traces are still left imbued within the factory space as you walk around, and you see some remnants which have got some connection to someone. So there's kind of very personal memories attached to the site. Skills are passed down traditionally by one generation to the next generation. There was a break in that continuity. Some craft skills are now endangered of being lost because they're not practiced, because the advancements in production technology have grown and labour is continuous through engineering, kind of robots, etc. And the human hand has been kind of relegated to other things. Using
a material like clay, which is full of potential and very forgiving in many ways. So the ideal way of kind of expressing your imagination and memory, and then working with the architects.
Yeah, it was incredible. There was a tremendous amount of passion, skill, like a lot of deep thought, a lot of emotion around people's backgrounds and what their memories of Spode are. I mean, I never got to witness that. I just used to ride past on the bus to school and see the closed gates. But so there's a lot of sort of important stories that were people brought to that, and I think it would be great to tell that through the site with some permanent pieces or something.
Ceramics is this wonderful democratic material, regardless of skill and ability. And it allows people to engage in a kind of multitude of ways. And it's got such a strong connection to the city and its heritage. So people coming in and experiencing kind of making and connecting with heritage and histories and trying to re-navigate those histories through making, and also contributing in terms of discussions about how they want their heritage to be. I think it's very important for the city to engage people from a grassroots level.
When you look at the work that came out, I mean, my goodness me, if you look at some of the iconic pieces where, royalty, heads of Europe would buy it and have it made for them. So, very ashamed that it's in the state that it is, and it's been left like that for many, many years. That really upsets me. And I think this project is fantastic in as much as we can do try and do something about it, and hopefully make people realise what a magnificent heritage we've got bang in the middle of Stoke-on-Trent. Amazing.
The thing that's really interesting is that you don't normally have that mix of people coming together. And also when you're working with a material like clay, there's a kind of letting go of certain fears and social difficulties in some ways, and it's almost like it's a medium for conversation as well as 3D imaginings.
What hurts the most, I think, is seeing all the moulds just stacked, just left, just no hands moving them, nobody touching them, nobody making anything. I think that is probably, it's deteriorated terribly, but the fact that that stuff is no longer being used is heartbreaking. And the thought that it's going into skips, that's soul destroying. As an artist and a ceramic artist, that is absolutely soul destroying watching that.
The site as a space really represents that connection and importance of involving in the community in what happens next.
Many times when we are trying to work within regeneration, consultation, especially from the architect's perspective, we tend to ask questions, we bring people also within the processes, but the idea of a material that they are really used to it and using that along with architecture and bringing this interdisciplinary perspective within the architectural project, it really brings a value and it really helps for architects to envision new futures.
I think it's a shame that the buildings aren't being used as much as they could be, so I'm really excited that there's going to be some development in the Spode factory.
Spode, it's the center, and people come here, people are brought together at the moment. There are artist studios here, also the BCB has its main studios based here. The China Halls is also one of the key spaces at the moment. So somehow, even though it's closed, even though there are many buildings that are derelict, it has managed to keep the life going on within it. So it just shows how essential and how an important part of the city it is at the moment.
The Spode site is so important in terms of people's memories, and so what's done with it in terms of the architecture and as a result how the space will be used by people is vital.
For me, Spode, I think, is lucky in one way that it still exists, as opposed to a lot of the potteries that no longer exist, having been demolished. It's a site I think they could do a lot without any demolishing.
So in a city like Stoke-on-Trent, where clay has been such an important part of its history and such an important part of its identity, using clay as a way into exploring contemporary themes, feels like a really important conversation to have. Whether it's thinking differently about the spaces that we inhabit and how materials impact that, but also thinking about actually, getting your hands on materials and the importance of that creative outlet.
Because we've all come from completely different backgrounds. We've got architects here, we've got people who worked in other artistic endeavours. It does make you think outside the box when somebody says, right, there's some clay, there's that fantastic building, and if we did develop it, show me what you think you would like to see or what could work, taking into account the heritage, the future use, and something that would, make us proud that it's in the middle of Stoke again.
We really want to make spaces sustainable, and I'm talking in terms of social sustainability. Spaces need to be used, the spaces need to be for the people, because otherwise no one is going to use them. We really need to start triggering those conversations and those levels of communication, not only at the end of the design process when we just ask people what do they think about this, but within the beginning, just in the very start when we are just devising ideas, concepts, etc.
Ceramics and architecture have had that integral link throughout history. You think of the brick, the facade, the carved details, the kind of mint and tiled floors, which are in many Victorian Edwardian dwellings. So ceramics is kind of integral to kind of architecture, and it still will be.
Richard Deacon, the sculptor, the famous sculptor that worked with Eric Parry on a building in Piccadilly, and he worked on like a cornice profile that's got this really colourful glaze, and they come up and fired it in Stoke-on-Trent, which was incredible. And I think some of the people that have made those some of the more curved pieces that were referencing some of the structural forms on the Spode site was really nice, and it'd be incredible to see how you might reinterpret that into the fabric of the new development.
I'm planning on making a building. I've done 3 sides, though, not 4, very simply because I think I would like to put a little cameo inside it, because I love Josiah Wedgwood, so for me that's a very important connection to Stoke and to Spode, because I'm very aware of how the massive windows at Spode, because there's windows everywhere, tons and tons of windows, had a massive impact on how people were able to produce more work. They could see what they were doing, and it worked really well on the Industrial Revolution. So all my little sculptures have all got windows. So there's a few people in them and a few empty glass windows, again, to show the dereliction of Spode.
And I've used moulds to create little moulds to sort of enclose the idea of Spode, the moulds, the mould store especially, which is an important building. The facade of the bricks, the roughness of the bricks, and the window edge, and then the broken pottery, because for me that depicts the way industry is, it's broken.
The people that are involved in the project have family members who were involved in the potteries, and they may not have necessarily worked on the Spode site, but they're still very close to their hearts. And so the site as a space really represents that connection and importance of involving in the community in what happens next.
I obviously had a personal interest in ceramics from my background, but also having worked with ceramics in large-scale buildings in London and across Europe. And I've never had the opportunity to work with ceramicists from Stoke-on-Trent. We'd always go to like America or Italy to procure ceramics to go on buildings. So I was really interested for this possibility and opportunity to talk to people about that.
It was really important for us to really capture how people remember, how people see the site, but also not in the present, but in the past. At the moment it was used, at the moment it was something else.
Whether it's learning more about the people that used to work for Wedgwood over the years, discovering those factory records, and really getting to know the people of Stoke through the things that they made, but also the real importance of Stoke in design history of the world.
We set up a small exhibition at the V&A Wedgwood collection, where we just showcased some samples or a selection of the objects that the community did, and also some of the ideas that the architects did.
But there are some factories which really cash in upon that kind of history of connection to people. And I think that's important to retain. Those factories are still in production in Stoke-on-Trent. It's important to engage that community of labour. Many of them are senior generation now, but to practice those skills and to pass them on for the next generation and look at ways of reinventing those traditions. I think it's really important, not to stay in the past, but to think about the past for the future.
I think there's a real narrative of the sort of decline of industry, but that said, more is produced in Stoke than ever before. This was a centre of production for many years.
Not really wanting to present a finalized idea or a finalized project, but more this initial stage where we just gather all the thoughts and bring everyone's views that could potentially lead into a later on an architectural urban design project.
If the council could somehow be involved, which is probably the planning department or the councillor for heritage and regeneration, I think there's a good opportunity there, particularly as they're working with Historic England on the Heritage Action Zone, which the Spode Works falls into, to sort of reinterpret how they can integrate some public art, some community art into that development. Because at the moment there's a planning application in, but unfortunately I don't think there's been any community involvement or anything from the public, and there's an opportunity there.
I think for me, collections allow you to understand the sort of whole complexity of that history.
I still believe there is space to kind of really embrace that history. If you make the wrong mistake, you don't get it back, you don't get it again.
That history is by no means dead, it's just changing.